The premise there, as you pointed out, is that people have been talking about attention spans being diminished by, essentially exposure to interactive media like the internet. And that seemed obviously fallacious because human attention spans are very task dependent. They're inherently plastic based on what you're doing. So I think what we've learned, and there's a new book called The Attention Economy that has some data about this, by Karen Nelson Field, I believe, saying that it's more that the platforms, the different media themselves, have natural qualities that sort of create natural attention thresholds that work on those platforms. So the nature of the content and the user experience and the different arrangements of content and the way you consume it are sort of the dependence, not the duration of the advertising you put into that. I think you want to make advertising and communication in general that does reward the consumption in that moment, right? You want to ideally make communications that is enjoyable to consume in some fashion and doesn't just stomp all over the attention that's been aggregated by the media that we insert ourselves into. At the same time, I do think that companies want to sort of express a more concerning, customer-centric point of view, and that does tend itself towards thinking more holistically about how you spend money, what you support with your media money, and thinking of that as a strategic action, and other kinds of consumer experience style interaction points. So I do think, yes, you can sort of rebalance the value equation. At a certain point, the media proliferates inevitably up to sort of plateaus. So in the US, it plateaued at about 12 hours a few years ago, where there's no more available media attention to sort of absorb. So when that happens, it becomes more of a way to stand out in that massive field of attention, and earning that attention through some sort of value transfer is one way to do that. So yes, we call this the Great Blur, and it's part of a sort of larger macro trend that to some degree the internet and digital interfaces between companies and customers have created this sense of a blurriness between public and private, and what people are willing to pay for and what they're not willing to pay for. But in the agency world, it's sort of a function of increased media channels and specialisms that are needed to produce work and understand consumer behavior in those places. But in a way, this is sort of inevitable, and I think it's Charlie Munger said this, or some business quote, that there are only two business models. There's bundling and there's unbundling, right? So previously we had a bundled kind of agency offering, and that's been unbundled, and so now one way to create value is to solve problems that our unbundling causes, which is to either rebundle strategy or to find mechanisms of integration that are more effective in that situation. So I mean, I think that's sort of inevitable. I don't think moving back towards a single full-service agency is likely, simply because the competitive set around which agencies operate has increased quite a lot, to include new actors like media companies with creative studios or consultancies that provide other kinds of consulting and strategic services, but also advertising services. So I don't think it's viable to try and merge all the different competitive threats into a singular, even mega holding company, I assume, although I'm sure Mr. Sorrell will give it a very good go.